Welcome to Key Conversations, where we talk about all the things to motivate and inspire you to create a fulfilling music career. And this season, season 4, we are talking about all the things it takes to release music, to release a record. And I'm excited to be following my own process with my record Luminary. You can learn more about it at iamaluminary.com. And today we're going to talk about mastering. And I am here with my favorite master engineer that I've worked several projects on with, Frank Gagliardi. Oh my God, Gagliardi. I can talk.
Do it, and then you're like, oh.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
I know you're busy. You've got like so many stuff. You're in Nashville. How'd you give us the quick nutshell of how you got into mastering, and then we'll dig into what you do and how an artist can really support you.
3 of us in a band, left a band, and found ourselves recording ourselves, then having to mix ourselves, and then when everything was almost close to sounding like a real thing, we came to, well, what's mastering? And I was like, well, maybe I should try that, because all the versions that we were getting back from people, even though they're great engineers, the band was not happy. And I didn't understand why. Your raw mixes can excite you more than some masters, and some guys just do one. You don't communicate and you don't get the result you were seeing, and these guys don't know. So if you don't talk about it, and I ended up just saying, let me do this myself, and I will go until we're happy, and then I'll know what made them happy. So it's always that way. I got forced into it, and it kind of has been the thing that spoke highly to me. Like, that's just it. I was like, we're gonna do this.
That's awesome. I love a good it spoke to me, and I did it by default, and I latched on, and now I chose it. It chose me, and now I chose it.
Absolutely.
Very cool. So my process with you, and I don't know if it's normal or not, so you gotta tell me. My process with you is I send you mixes from either from a mix engineer or the ones, for this record we talked last time. My last session was all about, or the last episode was all about mixing, and I happened to have mixed this one. So we had a little bit more communication because I was willing to go back to the mixes to tweak anything that might have made your job easier. But what's the normal process for you?
That's still something that should come into play, but it really does start at the artist. There's no, if it doesn't sound like what you're visualizing the entire length of the way, it's not going to be saved by just going to mastering. It's got to start when you hit record. It's got to start when you play it. If you're working with a group or an engineer, it's got to start happening there. Everything has to happen at the source, even through the mixing. And if that somewhat resembles the record you're visualizing, you're going to get a great result in mastering. If you're just hurrying up because you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, but yeah, I played everything, it's not going to just change magically. It has to happen right at the beginning. That's the biggest part. It's like, we're just here to see it through. We don't make things what they aren't. So that's a big one you figure out way later.
Yeah.
But when you had all that time to go in and make things work, that's kind of what should happen with a lot of people, actually.
Yeah. So maybe we should back up, and I should ask the question, what is your job? What is the role of a master engineer for an album?
You're really, really trying to take that thing that you spent all that time on and make the final connection. We're the last thing in the creative process before actual duplication. So that's the last chance to not only get you to feel like you've done your thing, but it's like, that's, connecting to each fan is the big job, the part of the job. There's a great recording, and then there's still emotion that could be put into it with some of the tools that we get to work with. And that's really the fun part of the job. It originated just to make sure records, literally vinyls, were getting cut properly. It was sort of like a real, policing of a process. And now that we have digital, it's still, there are parameters you follow, but you push them. It's creative still. And if you talk to your mastering engineer, you actually get pretty good results. If you just take their word for it, chances are you just end up frustrated and you just put it out anyway. But I think that's where things kind of fall apart.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, really, it's about that last bit of connection.
Yeah, it's connecting the tracks. What percentage of what you do is volume?
Oh, I mean, I have a thing that I have to hit. I mean, it's not, it can't be too low, but you want to create an energy, but there's also energy in a lot of other parts. It doesn't just come from turning it up. You're still, you bring it up and you bring a lot of, you know, sonic garbage with it that may have been collecting down there. And, you know, I like to get up halfway, clean some things out, excite some things. And I don't want to undo the mix. That's the big, you know, part of the job, is really letting it cut through a little bit more. There's just excitement in places that we can put things that it has to be done for us to do. You can only do so much in the mix where you have to like say, cool, I'm feeling pretty great, I'm done. Somebody that does not know this needs to work on this now. And that's the other good part of sending it to us, is just being outside of it all, and we can be very creative about it and not be too married to it. You know, it gets frustrating when you've been working on a record for a year.
Yeah.
You can't unsee what you've done the whole time.
Yeah, totally. It's so true. So what part of what you do is really about like EQing and bringing out certain, and I mean, we can get techie for a hot second here, because I'm sure some people listening are curious. What part of it is automation or volume writing or EQing, or what are the main tools that you're using in terms of just big picture compression and all those things?
Most of the time, EQing always plays a role. Compression doesn't have to. Limiting is the big thing, because you're trying to get a ceiling so it doesn't, you know, trigger red flags on all these streaming sites. But, you know, we can do small bits in several different pieces, not just, you know, one piece of equipment, slam it down. Everything is staging. But it's a lot of limiting. That's actually the fun part. The sound of certain boxes, it doesn't even have to be compressing. It just has to have a vibe. And EQing definitely, but that's for level, really. You know, you want to get, the hard part in mixing is an artist will say, yes, I'm done. Then they'll come to me and say, I want it massive like this pop artist. And they don't even have a quarter of the amount of low end that this mix does. I can't just add it all there randomly.
Right.
So it's really important that your mix is like 90% of what you're vibing on. And we can go ahead image-wise, focus. Compression should it doesn't have to be, but all tasteful things. The real fun part should be in the mixing with your mix guy. Get aggressive, get excited, get into all the elements, and then let us just do that final thing that we do. It's supposed to be a delicate thing, not very heavy-handed. So
yeah,
I think EQing is the most exciting for me anyway.
cool. So when you get the files, your wave files from the master engineer, from the artist, and you start to work, so now we're in the process, what's the best thing the artist can do to support you doing your job the best? What do you need from them?
Give me an idea of the songs that, you know, I don't really reference the sound of a track specifically, but if you have 3 artists that you like, it'll tell me roughly how loud, for lack of, you know, it's a rough word, but it shows me the level that this artist is hitting. It shows me sort of limits on how much low end I would probably do less than maybe a song you showed me, and that would let me know, hey, I can go a little further. And from having these reference tracks and what's in front of me, I could sort of split the difference, like get towards your artist, but really not change your mix in a way that you won't recognize it.
Yeah.
So I like having references, and, you know, a lot of artists don't necessarily need to know anything more than just a few of their favorite songs. That And it should sound like, you can't give me a ballad and say, I really want this to sound like Major Lazer. And I'll be like, but it's not. Make your references need to make some sense. So.
Okay. Logical references. Got it.
Yeah.
That they can give you that. What kind of conversations make you really happy and help you out to get the sound that they want?
Well, I like when they just tell me to do my thing and then we'll talk after that. Because to have too many, we don't always speak the same language, and to give me this whole layout and I take these notes, I'm going to work according to what I think it means. And the first phone call is going to be like, yeah, that's not it at all. And
Yeah.
don't like, so let's just try doing, because the mix kind of dictates everything. And in mastering, really, you should have heard a lot of music in your time, not technically, but just because you've listened to so many different genres, you know what is and isn't needed. So it's nice when they just say, go for it, and then let's talk after. A lot of times you get it right because you're not going too far from the song.
So in that conversation afterwards, after you've gone through a round or two, a little bit of tweaks, are there any words or phrases or anything that you can share with artists listening that might help them communicate with their master engineer better?
That's a tough one. I don't really know. I just think, tell me what you're feeling. I mean, if it excites you, that's a big thing. It's how the song is hitting you. So if somebody tells me, well, there's specifics. There's a lot of producers I work with that really can get into it. And then an artist that might not know just might only hear their voice. So they might think it's not loud enough because they feel like they got a little buried. I don't know. It's just hard to figure that one out. It's got, let the person just kind of talk in their language first. Because a lot of people, no one's going to be able to hear the things a lot of us hear on this side of things. So a guitar player is going to hear his voice, his guitar. A keyboard player is going to hear, or piano, they're going to hear that. You're not going to know if I'm talking about some weird low end that I had to cut out. So yeah, the language is tough, but just tell me what you know. Tell me what you're hearing. And I'm supposed to be the translator, not the other way around.
It's so funny. We talked to a mix engineer on a couple episodes ago, and it was the same thing. And even with an album artist, like, I want this to be darker, but darker is not the word, or the gradient. Like, there's a language for every dark element of this.
Dark's a famous one. Everybody's like, somebody told me, hey, do it dark because that's what they're doing now. I'm like, maybe that was just their bad recording and the song took off. Maybe that's not a target. If you want it darker, I'm thinking high end. And some of these people are thinking, no, back up the vocal more, but make it dark, but really shiny. I'm like, huh? So you're wrestling the same, you're doing this. It's a seesaw, but I don't know. I think people stick to the references, or, where you're going, and the mix should be there. Like, it shouldn't be like, hey, now do something completely unlike this.
Sure.
The mix is very important.
Awesome. Okay, 2 last quick questions. One, we did have a conversation about mixing or mastering the instrumentals, just so you have a vocal version and an instrumental version for licensing. We had a conversation with Mike Elsner, who's the total awesome licensing dude in Nashville, and he actually said, you want multiple mixes in the acoustic version, and then you want stems, and you don't want to master any of those. So if an artist comes and says, hey, I just want the instrumental, like, is that a huge deal, or are you sort of just, it's not a big deal?
I include it. I encourage it. But some people are at the point where they say, oh, yeah, I can't bother my mix guy anymore. Or I'm out of money. Like, that should kind of all be a part. You have to think, you're not going to make as much money if you don't have those to place places. I ask people and they're like, great, thanks, I'll have them print it. And I've asked other people to get them or not. I'm going to charge you the same amount. You don't have to have them. But I've had somebody a few times tell me I really can't call that guy anymore, which that sucks to me, because now you're afraid of the person that actually is getting paid by you.
Yeah.
Oh, you hired this guy and you don't want to bug him. I would harass him all hours of the night until it's done.
As would I. We are cut from the same cloths. Yes. Okay. So that's super helpful. So really it's like knowing from the beginning, you're going to be needing things from each person in order to get to the next step in this whole process. So you need to know what you need. You need to budget for it. You need to be willing to have that conversation probably up front. Say, hey, just so you know, I need to walk away with here with stems and instrumental mix and all the things. So that we can give it to you. So last question, talking to musicians who are releasing music or planning on releasing music, any other like tips off the top of your head, do's or don'ts to a musician that's releasing music and about to get it mastered?
I think really talking to, first of all, don't do it yourself if you don't have any idea. You can always do like a heated ref from your mix guy to give a mastering engineer an idea of where you're going. But I mean, don't do it yourself. You could take a shot at these online mastering things, but you know, you don't get to communicate, you just get it back. And I would say don't send overly compressed and limited mixes to your engineer for mastering. At least give a version without it so we could play that. You know, I see it your way, check out what some of my tools will do. Because we're always trying to, you know, we pay a lot of money for the 0.5% increments that we keep on stacking to ultimately get you that last 10% of, you know, sonic awesomeness. It's just really, we're nerds about sound. Like we buy things that we just put music through. They don't even do anything. They just sound better. So yeah, trust it. Trust it.
I love that. Communication and trust. That's sort of what I'm grabbing out of this. So if someone was like, I don't even know where to look for a master engineer and maybe would consider looking at you, where can we find you online? Where can people get in touch with you? Tell us the places.
That's just something I don't have. I have been working very under the radar, word of mouth, and I like it because we've got a good community here. But you could probably find me on Instagram, Frank_at_the fuselage mastering. That's my business, and I will happily, you know, get in touch and check out what you have. Maybe you are already there and want to release it and just want to know what could help. Even if it's not mastering, I'm happy to hear
Awesome.
Where it is, and you know, just talk about it.
Well, you're cool like that. So that will be in the show notes. I'll put that link directly to his Instagram. Thank you very much for taking the time to chat and sort of give an overview of what this process is and what's important. I think it's sort of like a mystery. It's like the dark cloud of the, you know, for artists, because it's so technical and it's such a subtle, like sometimes I barely can tell the difference. And you know, it's such a nuanced thing, but it is so important. And so you shed a little light on that. So thank you.
A lot of people have made it that way, and it's still a part. It's not like you've done all this fun stuff and now you're going to the doctor. It's, you know, it's still happening until it's delivered. So yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.